Hello, this is Max. Today I will tell you about a mysterious creature that takes control of the mind and forces people to kill. Warning, there will be spoilers. The movie commences with Mallory Hayes, a woman who gathers her children and informs them that they are embarking on a journey. Mallory explains that they will be rowing down a river for multiple days, aiming to reach a secluded house in the forest where they can meet others they consider as friends. However, there's a crucial condition. Throughout the entire trip, they must keep blindfolds on, and any removal, even unintentionally, would result in trouble. After giving instructions, blindfolded Mallory leads her children outside, accompanied by her pet birds. They arrive at the riverbank, finding a boat waiting for them. Mallory throws the boat into the river, jumps in with her kids, and starts their journey. The movie then shifts back in time, 5 years earlier. Mallory, an aspiring artist who is 8 months pregnant, is grappling with the aftermath of her recent divorce. Her sister, Jessica, arrives with news about people stockpiling groceries at the department store in anticipation of an approaching threat. Mallory, disconnected from the world after her divorce, is unaware of the situation. To her surprise, she turns on the TV and discovers that news channels are reporting a mysterious outbreak in Eastern Europe. The virus associated with the outbreak causes infected individuals to exhibit strange behavior, resulting in immediate self-destructive tendencies. Mallory initially underestimates the severity, believing the outbreak is far from the US. Later, Jessica takes Mallory to see a doctor. At the hospital, Dr. Laffin, the family physician, conducts tests on Mallory and asks if she is ready to become a parent. After hesitating briefly, Mallory responds affirmatively. On their way back, they encounter a disturbing sight: a woman repeatedly slamming her head against a glass pane. This incident awakens Mallory to the realization that the European outbreak has reached the US. Urgently, she rushes outside and insists to Jessica that they must return home immediately. However, they are confronted by chaos. Countless people have become infected and are resorting to self-harm. Amidst the turmoil, Jessica's car becomes involved in a fatal accident when she succumbs to the outbreak's influence. With no time to mourn, Mallory finds herself in a city turned into a war zone. Death surrounds her as she tries to follow others to safety, but she stumbles and falls. Witnessing her struggle, a woman defies her husband's protests and offers assistance to Mallory. Tragically, the woman becomes possessed by the malevolent entity and ultimately perishes after walking into a burning car, which subsequently explodes. Eventually, Mallory is rescued by a man named Tom, who helps her into a house where several people, including Greg the owner, Douglas, and Machine Gun Kelly, have sought refuge. In the subsequent scene, the group assembles in the main room to discuss the supernatural entity responsible for the global chaos. Charlie, a grocery store worker, theorizes that it signifies the end of the world, while others perceive it as an act of God. Nevertheless, everyone recognizes the entity as untouchable and understands that gazing at it leads to their demise. Meanwhile, Tom provides solace to Mallory, who remains distraught over her sister's untimely death. Just an hour ago, she had been living a happy, carefree life, but now the world has been turned upside down. The group proceeds to board up all doors and windows, determined to prevent anyone from looking outside. In the present, Mallory and her children have been rowing in the boat for 6 hours. Occasionally, they cover themselves with a blanket to briefly remove their blindfolds. Mallory attempts to use her walkie-talkie to seek help, but instead, she hears the voice of the invisible entity whispering her name. Returning to the past, Mallory and the other survivors establish a coexistence in the house. One day, a pregnant survivor named Olympia pleads to be allowed inside. Douglas initially refuses, but the group convinces him to let her in. Soon, they discover that Olympia is also pregnant. Greg suggests inspecting the CCTV cameras to observe the situation outside. Although the idea is met with skepticism, no one objects. As Greg watches the footage, he becomes frozen upon noticing something, seemingly possessed by the entity. A loud noise emanates from his room, prompting the others to investigate and find Greg dead. They realize that the entity can possess them through technology, prompting them to destroy the computer. In the present, after 14 hours on the river, Mallory hears a man's voice urging her to remove her blindfold. Suspicious of his infection, she instructs her children to remain low and keep their blindfolds on. The voice, drawing closer, claims to have food and describes the entity as friendly. Suddenly, the man lunges at the boat, but Mallory defends herself by striking him with a machete. In the following scene, the narrative returns to the past, where the group faces a food shortage. Anticipating no rescue, Mallory, Tom, and a few others decide to travel to a nearby department store using a car with covered windows and GPS guidance. During their journey, the GPS alarm signals the entity's proximity, but Tom skillfully navigates them to safety and into the store. They quickly gather supplies, and Mallory notices some pet birds that she decides to bring along. As they near the end of their scavenging, a man trapped in the freezer pleads for help. They release him, but he undergoes a demonic transformation, prompting Charlie to sacrifice himself to protect the others. That night, while Mallory and Douglas are discussing in the kitchen, they hear a noise from the garage, realizing that Felix and his girlfriend have escaped with the only vehicle. In the present, after spending 24 hours on the river, Mallory's exhaustion causes her to collide the boat with an old truck, resulting in the boy and their supplies falling into the water. Mallory manages to rescue the boy and brings the boat to a nearby shore. Mallory cautions the children to stay put and ventures into the woods alone to search for supplies. Using a rope, she discovers an abandoned hospital where she collects food and clothing. While rushing back, the entity calls out her name. Meanwhile, the little girl becomes anxious and disobeys Mallory's order, entering the jungle to find her. The entity tries to persuade her to remove her blindfold, but Mallory intervenes just in time, and they all continue their journey on the boat. In the following scene, a suspicious man named Gary is allowed into the house by Olympia, causing disagreement among the group. They examine him and decide to let him stay, but Douglas, the old man, raises concerns. Douglas is overpowered and locked in the garage. Olympia apologizes for the trouble caused, and Mallory reassures her. The two pregnant women bond and promise to care for each other's children if one of them dies. In the present, it is revealed that the little girl is Olympia's daughter. As they approach dangerous rapids, Mallory wraps them in a blanket and mentions that one of them must remove their blindfold to navigate. After considering her options, Mallory decides that none of them will look and they will trust fate to guide them. In the past, both Mallory and Olympia go into labor simultaneously. While Tom and Cheryl assist them upstairs, Gary, the suspicious man, reveals his true intentions as a messenger of the entity. He puts Mallory's birds in the refrigerator to silence them and proceeds to tear off the window coverings. Olympia becomes possessed and tries to harm herself, but she hands her daughter to Mallory before succumbing. Cheryl is forced to open her eyes and dies. Douglas arrives and confronts Gary, managing to shoot him in the arm, but they both perish. Tom kills Gary to protect the others. Only Mallory and the children remain. 5 years later, they live in a secluded house in the woods, away from the dangers of the city. They have adapted to their new environment, and even the birds have survived. Nevertheless, they still haven't given names to the children. Tom criticizes Mallory for this, but she believes it's not a priority. One day, they hear noises outside and discover infected individuals in cars searching for uninfected people. They realize their current house is no longer safe. During the night, Mallory's walkie-talkie suddenly comes to life. A man named Rick speaks from the other side, claiming to be in a secure complex with abundant supplies. However, reaching the complex won't be easy. Rick explains they must travel along the river, battling dangerous rapids for several hours. He emphasizes that the river is unsafe for children and that the birds are crucial for finding the complex. The following morning, the couple discusses the situation. Tom wants to visit the compound, but Mallory is skeptical after the incident with Gary. She is wary of trusting anyone. Later that day, while scavenging at a nearby house, the infected people return. Realizing time is running out, Tom urges Mallory to take the children and go while he deals with the situation. Tearfully, she agrees for the safety of the children. Mallory gathers their belongings and leaves through the back door, while Tom takes a gun and confronts the infected people. Tom manages to eliminate several of them before getting shot. To finish off the remaining infected, he removes his blindfold, transforming into a monster and eliminating them one by one. Finally, he commits an unthinkable act. Meanwhile, Mallory and the children arrive at their home. She begins briefing them about their journey, mirroring the events shown at the start of the movie. In the present, after 42 hours, they face the deadly rapids. Mallory does her best to navigate the waves, but the boat capsizes, causing them to fall out. Luckily, Mallory saves her children and reaches the shore unharmed. They continue walking through the woods, and the invisible entity appears, attempting to manipulate them into removing their blindfolds. However, they ignore its influence and instead follow the sound of the birds. Eventually, they reach a large compound, and Mallory desperately pounds on the door. Someone opens it, confirming they are not infected, and they are allowed inside. Inside the compound, they meet Rick, who reveals that it used to be a school for the blind, explaining why the people there were never infected. Dr. Laffin is also present and congratulates Mallory on her adorable children. Mallory names them Olympia and Tom after a moment of contemplation. The movie concludes as she opens her bird box, releasing the birds. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe and give this video a like. Goodbye.